Reform UK are polling in the mid to high 20s, in some cases even topping voting intention. And on the other, Nigel Farage himself has just hit a net approval rating of minus 21 in a recent opium poll conducted for The Observer between April 15th and the 17th, based on around 2,000 respondents. Let's have a look. You can see it there. Farage's numbers dipping, the light blue. Look at that dip, guys. Oof. Keir Starmer, for example, has been sitting in deeply negative territory for a long time, but that is not surprising, hovering around minus 40 to minus 50 for much of the past year. Even now, though, where he's slightly improved, he's still sitting at around minus 40. Farage, by comparison, is around minus 20, which is bad, but it is still consistently better than Starmer. And this is proving that this isn't a politics of popularity anymore. It's a politics of who is the least disliked. And I don't think that that's a great position to be in. Because if you're looking across the board, when you look at that graph, you've got Kemi, Starmer, Farage. None of them are actually liked in any meaningful sense, but the entire political class is operating in negative territory. But what's interesting is the type of unpopularity we're dealing with. Starmer's has been this slow erosion of trust, a sense that he doesn't really inspire anything. And I think we can all agree to that. It's just a kind of flat disengagement and anger over various U-turns and avoidable blunders that probably could have been, avoided. And Farage is different. His numbers are more volatile. You can actually see them dip more sharply as his visibility increases. I mean, he's always been quite visible, but I think he's being visible for the wrong reasons at the moment. As we know, over the past few weeks, Farage has been under much heavier scrutiny than usual. Part of that is simply because Reform are now polling so highly. But the moment you move from being a protest party to an actual potential political force, you've got the media, you've got the opponents, and you've even got your own supporters kind of going, hey, so what's it actually going to look like if you were ever to be in government? So you're no longer just throwing punches from the sidelines. You're actually being asked, like, what are you actually going to do? And it's not looking too good at the moment recently with Richard Tice. Richard Tice failed to pay almost £100,000 in corporation tax, benefiting his investment company, which made large donations to Reform UK. The deputy leader of Nigel Farage's party ran 4 shell companies which did not pay any tax on profits between 2020 and 2022. The entities existed purely to receive dividends from Tice's property investment firm and passed on the money, including the cash that tax specialists say is owed to HMRC, to their parent company. It's not looking good, is it? The Reform Party, supposed party of the working people, is actually not for the working people. Who would have thought? And that's where things have started to tighten around Farage. You've got your little cronies avoiding tax, and Farage has been speaking more on foreign policy a little bit, particularly around the rising tensions involving Iran and broader global instability. And I think that's a completely different arena to domestic culture war politics that he's normally used to on Twitter. I think it requires a level of presence and some consistency and some detail when it comes to that sort of stuff that protest politics doesn't always demand. So the more he steps into that space, I think the more he's going to be judged on the basis of his decisions, not just as like a disruptor, but as someone who might have to operate on the world stage. At the same time, let's not forget his long-standing proximity to Trump. I think is coming back into sharper focus. Trump is not in everyone's good books at the moment, and he's not the sort of person you want to be associated with. So I don't know if Nigel wants to take my advice. But as Reform rises, so does attention on what the party actually represents beyond the rhetoric it always puts out. Questions around funding, the backgrounds of key figures, tax avoidance, and the reality that many of those involved are themselves wealthy and well connected start to cut through all the bullshit that they feed us. And I think it creates that tension between the anti-establishment image and the material reality that a lot of us are actually facing at the moment. So couple all of those things together: increased visibility, the austerity we're facing, the complex policy scrutiny, and this global positioning. I think it's not surprising that Farage's personal ratings start to dip. But I want to bring Curtis. Curtis, what are your thoughts on this? Reform generally as a party, in terms of numbers, doing quite well, but Farage's popularity is dipping. Does this mean Reform is not the one-man band that people presume it to be? And why do you think this dip is happening in the first place?
Well, to be honest, and let's separate the support for Reform, for example, for a second. Nigel Farage has never been particularly popular. I think people need to understand that, right? I think people often link politicians to political parties. A strange thing in this country, people can separate that. Because we don't have a presidential election, we have a parliamentary democracy. People often vote for parties. In fact, lots of people's loyalties stay with political parties. You even heard politicians say stuff like, vote for us despite of the leader. That's what many Labour MPs tried to do when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. They said, vote for us, not in support of Corbyn, but in spite of him. So there is that layer of distinctiveness. But yeah, Farage has never been particularly popular. A lot of polling shows that he's usually the most disliked. The point isn't about being popular, though, because politics is always divisive. And you'll hear many people say that, well, Margaret Thatcher was a divisive character, Nigel Farage is a divisive politician. You can't not be divisive. It's impossible. Because if you attach yourself to a political ideology, 50% of people are going to hate you. If you attach yourself to a particular political party, people are going to hate you. If you wear the wrong suit, if you wear the wrong tie, whatever it is, people are going to dislike you too. I mean, there are people who've written off Keir Starmer and many other Labour politicians for simply being in the Labour Party. So I'm not actually as concerned about Nigel Farage's personal popularity. What matters is the party polling. But also in that poll, I think if you called it opium, by the way, it's opinion. Opium. I mean, someone was saying in the chat. Someone was saying in the chat, is that a Freudian slip? No, it's not. Behave, people. So yes, in that polling, I mean, Zach Polanski's polling's dipped. So says Ed Davies. In fact, so has Kemi Badenoch. Although, if you actually see who's sort of really gained popularity in the last couple of weeks, it's actually been Kemi, because the Conservatives have also risen in the polls slightly. They've been hitting 18%. Not high, of course, but I think some people are going from Reform to the Conservatives. So the point is, I mean, politicians aren't generally popular. And people look at that poll, and we're talking about Nigel Farage, and someone goes, well, hold on a second, Zach Polanski's lost a couple of percentage points. That's also expected because Zach is facing more media smears. Some of the most crazy stuff. I mean, we've all been through it. We went through it with Jeremy Corbyn. Anyone who threatens political and economic power is going to face, strong opposition. His polling's come down a bit because obviously he was unknown. Then he was known, or sort of. Then he rose in popularity, and he's come down a bit. So Nigel Farage, not a popular guy. He never will be popular. That doesn't matter. What matters is the political party behind it, Reform. And that's the interesting one. And Reform, they are losing their source. Absolutely. And we've said this before, and I'll reiterate it. Reform are the whining party. All they do is moan and cry and scream, oh no, everyone's against us. Oh no, the BBC's against us, the radical left-wing BBC, somehow. Oh no, we lost the Gorton and Denton by-election. It must have been a stitch-up. No one likes a sore loser. No one likes that. No one likes whiners. No one likes crybabies. And that's what Reform have basically become.
I think you make a great point, and that's probably, you're right in the sense that Farage has actually never been popular. I think he's just been maybe the least unpopular at one point. I think his limitation, I think, is simply that his party has been this vehicle of anger, and I think when you limit yourself simply to just, I'm an angry party, what do you actually stand for apart from the fact that you have a few disgruntled people? No one's really personally loyal to you, Farage. They're just loyal to the fact that everyone collectively in that space is angry. And I think that's where people are venturing at the moment. But you're also right in saying that the smears that are happening at the moment to Zach Polanski worries me slightly. I think we spoke about it briefly yesterday. But I don't know. Well, I think we'll have to see.
I'm not too worried about the smears against Zach Polanski, because I think this time people have been through it, especially when it comes to anti-Semitism. We're going to talk about that later on. We all went through it with Jeremy Corbyn. People are probably not listening to these anti-Semitic accusations as maybe they did in 2018. Of course, we've got the entire context of the genocide against the Palestinians. And I think people looking at, like, Israel's not popular. Israel is about as popular as America. In fact, actually, I think a lot of people see Israel and America as the same. We need a de-Yankification movement. We also need an anti-Israeli movement. And in fact, pro-Palestine or anti-Israel is becoming less left-wing coded and just the norm. A lot of the things like social movements are attached to just the left, and politicians will say, oh, the bloody left wing. you can't really do that when it comes to people supporting Palestine. I mean, politicians can try and say, "Oh, it's just these left-wing cabal." Majority of people do not like Israel, so you're calling everyone left-wing, which, to be fair, they probably are. The thing politicians can do, which is effective, is not trying to appease people, because that's what Keir Starmer's done. He's tried to appease people on all sides, and actually now no one likes him. You need to lean into the divisiveness, and this is something that politicians are really scared about. But you cannot win support unless you get your supporters energetic and angry. And what Zach Plansky is doing, which he's been criticised from Labour people, is that he's leaning into his base for now. People say, "Oh, he's popular online. Anytime he won't get into an argument with a Labour MP, he'll just tweet a picture of Peter Mandelson's face at them, which is hilarious, and it just drops the join the Green Party link." And it's like, but at the moment, because we're years away from a general election, that's exactly what you need to do. You need an army of volunteers, activists, and money. That's crucial to get people out on the doorstep, to do more broadcasting. Like, he's in the moment where he needs to drum up his own support first and then try and convince people. What politicians love to do in most political parties is completely forget about their base and try and reach over the other aisle. But you alienate your own base, and you often struggle to try and get people that really disagree with you.